Okay, so Boon Boonja episode 16, the long-awaited Six Ranger episode is finally here as we're introduced to Boon Violet, Bun Violet, whatever the hell you want to call it. But we're introduced to our Six Ranger, which has been a long time coming with the leaks and with the scans and stuff like that. We saw him really thick doing that pose, and then we saw him looking really good in a different high-res image. But now we've finally got our Six Ranger with episode 16. So the whole premise of this episode is that the Six Ranger lands and they're trying to figure out who the heck landed, but then you've got the Six Ranger Homura who's out doing deliveries for the bad guys, so you don't know where his alliance lies. But then also when the Rangers are leading their day-to-day lives, he gets involved and he's doing all the deliveries for them. So there's that going on. And eventually they all meet together and they all finally have their confrontation with the Six Ranger in the end, and you find out that he's one of the good guys. Now, that's the quick recap of this episode, because there's a lot I want to talk about with this Six Ranger. So this video is going to be like part review and part me rambling about the Six Ranger and what I thought of the dude. So we're introduced to Saikito Homura, I probably butchered that name, but Boon Violet, Bun Violet, whatever you want to call him, like I said, tomato. We're introduced to him in this episode along with Boon Diesel in this episode, and I just want to give my thoughts on the Ranger, like his changer, his mech that we're going to see next week, so I can't really give an opinion on that because I've mostly seen pictures of it, and I've mostly seen the toy, but we haven't seen the show yet. So, Homura so far. I really like his drip, I really like his outfit, I think his outfit looks really cool. His personality, I'm getting used to now because it's only the first episode, it's his introduction episode, so we've still got a while to stick around with this guy and get used to him and kind of see his growth as a character and his story arcs he'll go through. But he's kind of a mystery because you find out that he was in space the whole time and now he's back on Earth, so I wonder what's up with that. And then we find out that Boon Diesel is the rival to Boondario, and they were rivals back in the day during the Grand Prix. So I really like that Boon Diesel and Boondario have history, because I'm glad that these guys are going to be rivals, because there's probably so much you can set up with that, like the cop lady who disappeared for so long and now she's finally back. I forgot her name. Shirabe, I totally did not look at the wiki, the pause the recording for a brief moment, but she comes back because finally in this episode we have the Boon Boonjas meeting Cannonball, which kind of clicked with me when I watched this episode. I was like, oh yeah, they've never actually met the dude before. He was in last week's episode where he was like sort of standing on the railing of something, but they've never been like formally introduced to the guy if I remember correctly. So I think this was their first time meeting him, which is crazy to think about. I didn't think they'd go so long without our heroes meeting Cannonball. But bringing you back to the whole Shirabe thing, I do wonder if there's going to be sort of this love triangle between Boon Diesel, Boondario, and Shirabe, and it'll kind of be like back in the day with Gingaman, where Ginga Blue, Goki, I believe their name was competing with this other guy who was played by Car Ranger Red, and they were competing for this teacher's love, I believe, and it was this ongoing storyline throughout the show with the many characters of Gingaman, where they would have these story arcs placed throughout the show. And I do wonder if that's going to sort of be like the running gag between everyone, where Shirabe has the hots for Boondario and Boon Diesel has the hots for Shirabe, so there's this whole thing going on between them where they're competing for each other's love. So I do wonder if they're going to go with that kind of joke. If they do, I'm all for it. I'm sure they can make some funny gags out of it. I do like the performance of all these characters here, like the voices they have as well, so that's really cool. But bringing it back to Boon Violet, bringing it back to Homura, his changer I really do like as well. I hadn't seen it until like last week or earlier this week when they started showing off the toys, and I really like it. I think it looks really cool. It's this controller that we find out that was made by Boondario, but he couldn't figure out a way to get it to work, so he threw it away. And eventually you had Homura finding it, Boon Violet finding it, so that's how he's able to change into Boon Violet, which is fascinating. So I did like that seed plant that we had at the start of the episode once we find out what the controller looked like, and then we get that seed plant throughout the episode that Boondario was the one that built that controller. But it's really cool. I don't know if I'm going to buy the changer myself. It does look cool. Maybe if they make a memorial version, possibly. But we'll have to see how it goes. Maybe I'll watch a couple of reviews on it on YouTube or something like that. But it's mostly the mechs for Boon Boonja I'm trying to chase right now. But we have, at the end of the episode, like I said, Homura comes in, saves the day. Really cool fight scene that shows them off in this episode. We finally get to see that shot, that unflattering pose of Boon Violet we saw in that leak again here, but I think it might have been fixed up a little bit or it was a more cleaner shot. We have that in this episode, but it's also setting up something for the bad guys where they have their own sort of sword, much like that Boon Robo uses, and it was the monster of the week, but it got destroyed and it turned back into a sword. And apparently this sword can store up gasoline as well, so it looks like that the bad guys are plotting something. But again, Cannonborg also in this episode mentions that there's a big boss out there, and I'm so curious who this big boss is. We thought it was Mad Rex. It wasn't Mad Rex. We've got Cannonborg. It's not Cannonborg. He's not the big boss. So who is the big boss of this space Yakuza mafia? I'm so curious to find out. But overall, I thought this was a really fun episode. I really enjoyed the first introduction for Boon Purple. I thought it was a pretty solid episode. Again, had some gags in there, had some action in there, but not only that, it's setting up some story elements that we'll see as the show goes on moving forward, like the big bombshell at the end where we find out that Boon Dario and Boon Diesel have a rivalry from back in the day, because in this episode it did open with them training for the Grand Prix, which is something I honestly kind of forgot about because they haven't mentioned it for so long. So I do wonder, is Boon Diesel going to compete with them, or is he going to be a rival but he's going to compete with them in a way? You know, he'll race, but he's going to race to sort of do his own thing. Or they'll be allies for now on the battlefield, but when the race comes, it's going to be like back to the glory days when they were racing. So we'll see if that happens. But overall, I enjoyed this episode. I thought it was pretty fun. Got a kick out of it, and I can't wait to see where this show is going to go next. Because next week, so it looks like we're seeing Boon Diesel's mech form, and not only that, it looks like at the end of that episode, we'll probably have Boon Violet join the team, because one of the things he says in the trailer is saying he wants to join them. So we'll have that going on. But overall, I really enjoyed this week's episode of Boon Boonja. Boon Boonja is still a fun series to watch from week to week. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still liking it. I like the characters. I like the action. It's pretty fun to follow along, like nothing too crazy is going on so far. And I do wonder where the show is going to go next, because we're in what they call the second lap. So I do wonder when this core is coming to an end, and we'll start with the third lap now that we've got our sixth ranger. So I am curious to see where the show is going to go moving forward once the sixth ranger joins. But overall, what did you guys think of this episode? I like I said, I enjoyed it, but what did you guys think? Tell me down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm out of here. Peace out. Take care. Bye.